I want to walk through one more deal that recently came up that Shane is actively working on. He has a deal in Macon, Georgia, right? You're going with the Ken Holmes business model, 50-50, no debt, pocket listing of a broker, and the terms were that you had to close in what, 40 days, 45 days or something insane? So 55-day close, and you've never raised $1 before, 210 for King Street. Okay, so you got a short close period, limited CapEx required, right? You don't have to do much in the way of CapEx. Gate, no, so just some signage, lighting, odds and ends. Yep. 21,000 square feet. Your demand numbers, if I read correctly, were 9.6, 7.1, and the purchase price is 560, so that fits into the Wagner model under nice and cheap. And the capital stack, you're about 50% filled out. So what I want to do is basically everybody turn to a neighbor, and I want to take a second and kind of talk about, hey, here you go, Terry, if your life depended on it and you had to close this deal, but you need to figure out how to fill out this capital stack. And I just don't want to go to the next slide and it's like, oh, Ian's talking about it has to be done this way. Like, I want you guys to kind of talk about different ways that you could fill this capital stack out. Like, so Shane came to me and said, hey man, I've raised 300. I'm worried about the next 300. I don't really know what to do. How can you help me out? And I thought we came up with a pretty cool idea. However, he's continued on and he's just about fully capitalized. But if everybody wants to take a second, turn to their neighbor and talk about what are different ways besides trying to get the deal done, and the owner wouldn't owner finance, right? Shane? So take owner financing out of your repertoire, and how would you guys fill out the rest of this capital stack? So if you just want to take 5 minutes and try to figure it out. I've never really done an interactive presentation like that, so hopefully it works for me. Does anyone have like who came up with something? What ideas we got? And there's a reward for sharing. Andrew, right? Yeah. Go ahead, what do you got?
After you tap your network, then you could either do a hard money to just get the deal done, or offer some equity to somebody else to raise money, or if they got a network.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. Hard money is an interesting idea. And since I donated a ton of money to enough coffee, here you go, thank you, take some home. But here's the problem with technically taking.
We're halfway there, guys.
Yeah, no, but here's the problem, right? Like if you took hard money, his whole goal, yo, Casey, Jesus, dude. You act like I never talk. But the problem is, Shane didn't want to take debt, right? So technically, if you take hard money, now you're encumbering in the first position. What would happen to your investors? Do you think they'd have an issue if you took first position debt? Yes, okay. So that's an issue, but I agree going out to the network, trying to find other people, tap other resources beside your first network. Who else has got an idea or wants coffee? So just share your idea. Bob.
So you said the owner won't finance, but would he take equity?
You don't think you would, but yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, you could. Here you go, Bob. I hope you like coffee. No, that's a good idea. You could try to get the owner to take equity, right? Like, just because he won't finance it, maybe he's like, hey man, listen, I really understand you want to get cashed out. You really like this asset. For me to get it across the finish line and plug the money that I need to plug into it, do you mind holding back some equity, and you'll get an additional equity pop above and beyond what you were originally going to buy this for, we were going to buy it at, and show him how much more money he would make by retaining some equity in the deal, right? Like that's a possibility. Joe, right? Release your deposit and say, hey man, listen, you're gonna lose your deposit either way, right?
Right.
It's already hard. Release your deposit and say, hey man, listen, I need 2 weeks, you better perform or you're really gonna lose your deposit. Your deposit's already out the window anyway. Release your deposit, buy yourself an extension. I'll get you something else, St. Pauli's girl later. No, those are all really good ideas, and actually I like that last one, potentially buying yourself more time. Do you think if you had another 2 weeks you could finish out your capital raise? At the time when we were originally discussing that, you're saying like once you're in contract and you're going down this line and you're like, listen, I'm gonna bump you up by 10 grand, but I still need 2 weeks, and ultimately the broker is gonna get monetized more because they're gonna earn out more money, so it might be worth it for them to sell it to them. That's actually a really good idea. That's something inside a deal structure that we should all look at. When you're talking with brokers, it's not just the structure of the deal that you're doing. Your structure is also inside of dealing with the brokers, right? You have credibility with these brokers to get your deals done. You've told them. I mean, if Shane tells him he's going to do it and then he shits the bed, that guy is never going to answer your phone call again, right? And he's going to tell all of his friends. So now you've just wiped yourself out of probably 20 brokers, right? So yeah, no, I definitely agree. So Shane reached out to me and we had a very long discussion of trying to figure this same situation out. The guys that were on the hard money route were kind of in the right idea. Follow me along. I don't know how well this is going to come out of me, if you can imagine that. So maybe later with a couple beers, it'll really come out better. But here you go. Let's try to follow this one along. How I would take a look at it, you got 30 days left in this contract. You're 300 grand short. Oh, maybe I had 2 more slides. Damn, I really screwed up today. Oh, I'm sorry. And there was a current NOI of 38 grand, right? And the pro forma NOI was 90 grand in year 1, right? And the plan for you was to sell in 3 years. So with that being said, something that we had a discussion about was, can you give up additional equity, right? Could you entice one of your investors? And we, Casey and me and you had a discussion this morning. We were talking about raising capital. Is as soon as you have some blood in the water, the investor's going to see blood in the water when you're going back to the well, or they're going to say it's not a good deal, and now they're bowing out, right? So that's one thing you can't go through. So let's follow me along here. Shane owns 50% of this deal, right? And he gave up 600 grand for the other 50%, right? He raised 300 grand, so therefore there's 25% that's accounted for. Let's just say Shane put up the other 300, you would have 75% of this deal. So you could have brought, in this situation, what we had a discussion with one of my investors said, hey, why don't you just have a co-GP here? You're giving up, you're gonna fill out this other 25% of this capital stack. You're gonna offer that guy, he was gonna offer him some sort of pref on his side of things and give him about 20% of the equity is what we figured it out to be. And that actually wound up leaving Shane, from a cash flow side of things, his cash flow would have went down, but he was really looking at this for an equity pop. So he was able to retain 5% more for himself. So this 90K NOI, had he gave up 50%, would have been 45 grand to the investor group. Had he raised another 300 grand in this co-GP situation, right? In this co-GP situation, just say he would have gave them a 10 pref, that would have been 36 grand a year. So out of Shane's cash flow now, he's got 45 grand plus 22 and a half, gives you 66, assuming he fills out this last 300 grand, and then he's gonna wind up giving up 36, so your cash flow goes down by maybe 10,000 bucks. In exchange, you're retaining 5% more equity, and you got the deal done because that was the most important thing to you. And technically, you're not encumbering your investors with any sort of debt. Does that make sense to everyone? His money's staying in the deal. Basically, he's saying, you know what, I'm going to fill out this other 300 grand. I'm going to go find another person to sponsor this deal with me. I'm just going to bring the other 300 grand. And he's going to offer some sort of promote structure to those people on that side of this deal to get this deal done. He was going to offer them a 10% preferred return on the money. So basically like an interest rate on their money. So 2,500 bucks a month of the cash flow would have went to service the preferred, but then they would have gotten 20% of the upside that was due to them. Does that make sense? And then he still retains 55 because now he's got that 5. And then the investors in that deal would have been good to go. You could have structured this thing in a lot of different ways. I know it's kind of hard to follow through here. I knew this was going to be hard to read on these types of slides and for me to present it, but we did it really good on the Zoom call. Either way, the money comes out, but what was it for you in this situation that would have made you, how would this make you feel knowing you had this backstop? And then as soon as we did this, you slept better, and what happened? The rest of the money started coming in, right? But at least you had a backstop measure to get this deal, because again, it came down to what his reputation was on this deal. And by chopping up that little bit extra that he would have had, he's able to give away a little bit more promote inside of this deal, ultimately to get the deal done. So you're trading off a little bit of cash flow up front in exchange to get your deal done, is ultimately what we did here. Yeah, so again, you can structure them any which way you want. And I think going into it, had you had a back, having a plan B midway kind of helped you out. Having a plan B from day one, I don't know that you would have been as aggressive on raising the capital, right? Because I got the plan B. So it's good you kind of put yourself up against the wall.